You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. I believe it was Mike Scarborough who had it first, that Walker Howard is entering the transfer portal on 3, and everybody else has the news now that that Howard is planning on leaving LSU. Just kind of as a quick catch-up, Walker Howard was a 5-star, you all know, from the Lafayette area, went to St. Thomas More. He's a legacy, the son of Jamie Howard, former LSU quarterback. And, you know, I believe all along here we all knew that Walker was coming to LSU with the understanding that he was going to sit for a year. And that he was willing to do so. It's something that more than a year ago when Walker committed, and we talked on the show with Jamie, it's one of the things he said. You know, it's Jamie had to play early and knows how much that can affect a young player, and sometimes it's a good thing to sit and watch and learn and grow and develop physically and emotionally and just all, you know, just a maturity level and all that as you get older. So there's a lot of that makes sense. I think, you know, when we were doing Whiskey and Wine after the bowl game, and T-Bob and I were talking about it, and people were asking about Nuss and the possibility of Nusmeyer leaving because Jaden was staying. Kind of my feeling on the matter was, hey, look, you know, Nusmeyer is getting on the field, and the coaches are talking about him getting an opportunity to compete. You know, maybe the bigger flight risk is actually Walker, because if he's not even getting reps, you know, he came here with the understanding he was going to sit for a year, but would he be willing to sit for 2 without even getting reps? You know, there's a big difference between being a turned ankle away from going in the game or even getting second-team reps or playing and splitting reps with the ones and running scout team. And that's effectively what Walker was going to be doing for a second year had he stayed. You know, we had a message earlier into the show that said, you know, it sucks. Of course, you know, you'd love for him to stay, and it's true. I mean, he's a legacy. He's a kid from Lafayette. It's a last name we all know, and he's a guy that's really easy to cheer for. But he also came here. Look, and he was being recruited to Notre Dame by Brian Kelly, so he's familiar with the coaching staff as well. And he's a guy that you would love to have seen wait his turn and have an opportunity eventually to be the guy. But you could also, if you're in Walker's shoes, say, well, what if you stick it out another year and then you go into year 3 and Garrett Nusmeyer is the starter and you're still the backup? So, you know, it's the nature of the position today. It's the nature of the position. Guys don't stay. They seek opportunities to get on the field more quickly and to play. And with the transfer portal, it allows for that, and that's just the nature of where it is. Does it sting more because it's a guy who's got a last name you recognize, whose dad played here, who grew up an LSU fan, who's from Lafayette, who we watched throughout his recruitment, who we celebrated when he committed, who we'd all love to see what it turns into in time? Yes. Now, there's the idea from some that, you know, why, and I've seen some of the messages, why would you keep Jaden and let Walker walk? You know, that's easy. That's not even anything that's debatable. I mean, I understand that in this fan base right now, as nonsensical as it is, there's some of you that don't want Jaden Daniels to be the starter, despite the fact that he threw for 2,900 yards and was your leading rusher this past year. He accounted for nearly 70% of your offensive production. He was for a chunk of the season when you had no offense, he was your offense behind an offensive line that for half the year was a sieve. I mean, of course, if you're LSU, you want back the guy that started 40 games in his career and is a year more mature within this offense, with these receivers, with this line, with the cadence and everything. I mean, of course, you want that guy back. I'd challenge that the bigger potential issue was Garrett's decision to stay. And with Garrett Nusmeyer deciding to stay, that means Walker doesn't have the opportunity to compete really for the job in 2023. Now, the big issue is what happens also if Garrett Nusmeyer leaves. And y'all, this is something that we've talked about here before, but it's worth bringing up again because now part of this has been realized. and this happened to LSU in 2018. You had Joe Burrow transfer in. You had Miles Brennan back. You had Lowell Narcisse, and you had Justin McMillan. Well, McMillan and Narcisse both left, and you were left with two quarterbacks in 2018. A transfer, Burrow, who had never played, and a redshirt freshman in Miles Brennan. So that's the really sticky spot for LSU right now if you're Brian Kelly and his staff. Keep in mind, we played this a bit ago, but this was Brian Kelly after the bowl game. I mean, you beat Purdue, and then Brian Kelly was asked about the quarterbacks, and this is what Brian Kelly said 9 days ago.
I absolutely 100% believe that all three quarterbacks are going to be with us, and all of them we've had conversations with, and feel that that's the direction we're going.
9 days ago, Brian Kelly said, I absolutely 100% believe all three quarterbacks are going to be with us, and that he'd had conversations with all of them. Well, something changed between the bowl game and now for Walker Howard. And I think sometimes the thing that might have changed is opportunity. Look around the country at who needs a quarterback, who has an opening and an availability for a starting quarterback potentially to come in and play, or at least to compete for the job. I mean, we mentioned TCU, which is one obvious one, right? TCU just played for the national championship. Sonny Dykes runs an offense that would certainly fit Walker Howard's skill set. Jack Besh, his high school teammate, transferred to TCU. That would make a lot of sense. We shared with you last hour that Jaden Rashada, the 5-star quarterback signee from Florida, or who had initially committed to Miami, flipped to Florida, signed with Florida. Jaden Rashada has requested a release from his national letter of intent. So at Florida, now Anthony Richardson's gone pro. Jaden Rashada has requested a release from his national letter of intent. They brought in Graham Mertz, transfer from Wisconsin, and they got Jack Miller as well, the Ohio State transfer there as well. But Florida needs another body, and we know Florida is willing to spend on NIL. I'm not telling you that that's the thing that's going to be enticing for Walker. I don't know that he's a guy that's solely going to be lured by an NIL opportunity, more so an opportunity to play. But that opportunity to, at minimum, go and compete for the starting job would be there in Gainesville. And I would tell you the same thing is true at Auburn. And this is going to be something that I'm sure a lot of you aren't going to like to hear. But the reality you're facing now is that Walker Howard's probably going to go somewhere and you're going to have to see him again. But Auburn would be a very real possibility as well. There's been talk about Spencer Sanders, the Oklahoma State transfer, maybe leaning toward Auburn. Well, Auburn has a terrible quarterback room right now. They brought in transfers the last 2 years. They got a lot of bodies there and no one that's really produced. Now you bring in Hugh Freeze, who has no loyalty to any of those guys. Walker Howard under Hugh Freeze makes a lot of sense, and you know Auburn has been as aggressive as anybody in the transfer portal and with NIL opportunities right now. I mean, if I'm putting together a short list of where might Walker Howard land, TCU, Florida, Auburn, all of those make a ton of sense. And two of them are in the league and schools that LSU plays every year. And, man, that would suck. No other way around it. It would suck mightily to see that guy go to a school that you have to play every year. We talk about sometimes when you lose recruiting battles or when guys transfer, it always stings, but it hurts more when you got to face them every year. When they go to a place and you never see them, it's no big deal. It's less of a deal. But when you got to play them every year and they can come back and beat you, of course it stings more. So just a few of the landing spots potentially to keep an eye on. But for Brian Kelly and his staff right now, you're down to two guys. And you know you got Ricky Collins coming in, which puts you at 3 scholarship quarterbacks. But I would also submit that the worst case scenario, which we've talked about, the worst case possible scenario of losing both Walker and Nusmeyer is a possibility now. What if you go through spring and Jaden's still your starter and Garrett says, you know what, I'm going to tap out? Maybe he stays. I hope he does. I mean, it would be fantastic. Get another year of Jaden, and then after that, you'd have 2 years of Garrett. Like, that would be a great scenario for LSU. It may not happen that way. So But if you're LSU and you're Brian Kelly, you at least have to prepare for the possibility of what if Garrett leaves as well. And you would have to add a quarterback. I mean, you got to go. Say this again, y'all. It is never, ever, ever, ever a bad thing to have experience and depth at the most important position in organized team sports. It is never a bad thing. And I know I get the question often, well, what guys would want to come to LSU if you got a starting quarterback here already? And I get that, and all of it makes sense. But, we've seen this. We've seen this at Kentucky, where they've got Devin Leary, the quarterback, coming in. The quarterback coming in from NC State, and they went and signed another quarterback in this transfer class. It was I'm going to tell you, it's from a smaller school, and maybe that's the approach that if you're LSU, you have to look at and take. Deuce Hogan, they brought in Deuce Hogan from, it looks like from Iowa. So you bring in Deuce Hogan from Iowa as well, and now you've got two transfer quarterbacks coming in. Deuce Hogan's not going to beat out Devin Leary. I mean, he's going there to be the starter, and he's going to be the starter. But you got a guy that's got some experience and can provide depth, and so they signed two because they need to. And maybe that's a situation where, maybe that's a situation where Brian Kelly and LSU are going to find themselves as well, where they're going to have to add some depth at that quarterback position. So file it away. Again, Walker Howard enters the transfer portal, done at LSU after just one season. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.